Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted to have you with us. We are on the last day of our show for the next week or so. I will be actually heading to Asheville tomorrow to spend some time working with and training Dr. Patrick McGann in the quantum still point process. And today I'm hoping to engage in a way that includes absolutely everyone in the quantum still point process. Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that you're with us. Delighted that we have the opportunity to engage in this conversation one more time. I can't tell by the signature that comes in who's with us from 5125, but delighted that you're here and delighted that you're ready to engage in the next level of this process-oriented work based in first century Aramaic forgiveness. It's an honor and a blessing to be joining you. And if you happen to be listening from a link that you got in your text messages, I would invite you to, you can listen from there, of course, but you can't fully engage. You can't make comments in the comment section, nor can you have a conversation with it. However, if you go to your app store and type in NEDL, you'll find the Needle app. And if you download that app, then you can make comments. Download the app, find Mind Shifters Radio in the list, select this as a favorite. It will ask you for your phone number, and then you'll get a notification each day that we start the show. And so if you listen from within the app, you can fully engage. We can have a conversation, and we are rock and roll. And before I get into any of the material that I'm planning on covering today, I'll just invite you to put your hand up, or well, actually, not put your hand up. That's the old technology. This time you hit the call button, or put a comment in the comment section. And if you hit the call button, it will ask you a couple of questions, and then you hit the lower call button. There's an upward and a lower one. You hit the lower one, and that will give me a signal that you want to say hello, and we'll be having a conversation. And I would be delighted to have a conversation with you, especially if there's anything we can do to support you. If there's anything happening in your world that you would like some support with, that's our purpose for being here. And we are delighted when we get to fulfill that purpose, especially because the show becomes far more meaningful when there's a live interaction with real people with real issues, rather than just me going on and doing a monologue. So if you're out there in listener land and you have a thought, a question, something we can support you with, then hit that call button, or put your comment in the comment section, and let's talk about it. One of the objectives of this whole body of work is to break the spell of what in the ancient teachings was called the mind of man. The mind of man, I would offer, is different from the other mind that's mentioned in those ancient teachings. Yeah, remember there was what was called that mind of man, and then there was the mind of Christ, which has been misinterpreted to be about an individual man by that name, but in the Aramaic language, the word Christ is not a name. The word Christ is actually the label that they put on an office. And the office is one of living out of the mind of love. So the day you start to do that, we would call you, Bill or Harry or Mary or Terry, Christ, because that's what the word means. It actually literally means the buttered one. When someone awakened to the true state of being, when someone had broken the spell of the past, breaking the spell of the past doesn't mean you're finished with it yet, but that the mind of being, the state of being, is available to you in a reasonable fashion, whatever's happening in your world. If one strictly lives out of carbon-based memory, and you look at carbon-based memory, this body-mind unit is a device that literally stores every energy that comes to it. Everything that comes in through the senses is stored holographically in every cell in your structure, including, by the way, the sperm and the egg. So were you to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in. And those energetic patterns are passed on through this carbon-based memory system. And if you look at what we call this body-mind unit, it is a carbon-based device. The one mind you can live in is the mind of love, and then there's the mind that goes against the mind of love. If the mind of love is called the Christ mind, then what would the mind that goes against the Christ mind be called? Obviously, it would be the Antichrist. And you remember that there was a number assigned to that particular mind. If you were to take your body into the chemist's lab and say, here, take a chunk of this, break it down to its base elements, what is it made of? The chemist is going to tell you that the base element in your structure is carbon. And if you look at a natural carbon atom, the natural carbon atom has 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. 666. Anybody recognize that number? That's the number of the mind that goes against, that makes all the noise, that carries the generational patterns of hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, and trauma. When it's firing off big time noise, pain, blame, look whose fault it is, look what they did to you, look at how much of a victim you are, or look how guilty you are, look what I've done. Carbon-based memory. 666. The mind that goes against the mind of love in you is active. Forgiveness is about weakening that mind. Forgiveness is literally about shaving off the volume that can be achieved by that mind. If you think about your beautiful $100,000 stereo system over there, you turn the music on and you crank it up, man, it's ear blasting. If somebody puts a limiter on the volume control, let's say you turned up to a 10 and it is earth shaking, and somebody puts a limiter on it that it only goes to 5, well, there's still quite a bit of noise, but it doesn't rattle the furniture. If somebody limits it to a 2, you might be saying, could you turn that up? I can't hear it. And if you quell it completely, then it's just not available. It's like it's just not there. And that's the idea. That's what happens with forgiveness. Over time, as you apply forgiveness, the noise from carbon-based memory is stilled. And when that noise is stilled, then what was called the still small voice, the voice of the mind of love in you, becomes clearly available, clearly understandable. Now, if you've listened to carbon-based memory for a long time, it might take a little bit of time to adjust to what's that mind of love really saying in me. And when you recognize that you're simultaneously creating what you perceive, that energetically, the energy fields that radiate out into the world from you through carbon-based memory are impacting and helping to set the circumstances up that happen in the world, then you realize the dual power of forgiveness, of removing that energetic amplitude. Because all of a sudden, not only is the noise quiet in your mind, but the energy pattern that goes out into the world is subtler and not as loud, so to speak. And then, of course, there's the triple whammy benefit of forgiveness, and that is not only have you quelled the voice of carbon-based memory, not only have you stilled the energy patterns that you sent out into the world that created those results over and over again, but you removed from your tissue structure your disease. That's the power and the benefit and the beauty of carbon-based memory being cleaned up. And there is only one place on planet Earth that I know of that you will find a tool which, if consistently and persistently applied, will free you of the noise of carbon-based memory. And as that thing collapses, remembering that what forgiveness does is it collapses a perceptual mind. It collapses that place where all of our beliefs are stored. And when that world shuts up, then there's a world of direct experience available to you. So there are many rituals in the world, and a ritual is a systematic way of focusing one's creative energy toward producing a particular result. They're empty rituals that engage with nothing in the actuality, but simply those things within the belief system. And then there are rituals which actually shift and change the energetic dynamics that are happening. Forgiveness is one of those tools, is one of those rituals. And so questions coming up here, let me see what Jamuna's got to say. So if you're doing the forgiveness and nothing seems to be changing, does this mean just to have faith? Well, it's a good question, Jamuna. And if you go back into Yeshua's work, things weren't much different back then. The same question was asked, and it was asked a little bit differently, but basically, one of the disciples, I think it was Peter, said, how many of these darn worksheets do we have to? How much of this forgive? How many times should I forgive as to my brother? And it's interesting. Every time that the Greek misinterpretation of the scriptures says, "Forgive your brother, forgive yourself, forgive another," it misses out two words. And this is on this, everything turns backward. And so most everybody in the Greek-oriented world is trying to forgive everybody else for what's going on inside of them. But Yeshua never says, forgive your brother for what's going on inside of you. Yeshua says, forgive as to your brother. And so if you and I interact and you bring up pain in me, I go, well, here I am with my pain. I have forgiveness. I have something in my carbon-based memory that hurts. So I'm going to apply forgiveness to remove that. It's nothing for me to forgive you for. So Yeshua would not say, forgive your brother. Yeshua would say, forgive as to your brother. And if you come from a long line of people who've been in hurt and pain and trauma and blame, it's going to take time to move through those. So Yeshua's reply was, no, 7 times is not enough. And in Aramaic, he said 77 times 70. Now, I don't believe the disciples were probably very literate in math, so I doubt they were getting out their pens and papers and going, let's see, 77 times 70, 7 times 7 is 49, carry the 4, 7, add 9. No. 7 is a number of completion. 0 is infinity. How much work will you do to clean up your bloodline and its pained, traumatic experiences? An infinite amount of work until you're finished with it. And so, yes, it's going to take patience. It's going to take keeping on track and doing your work. And as you do that, and so your next, you just said, so if somebody isn't reading the notes or the comments, so it's about removing the perception of the pain, correct? Well, actually, what the forgiveness process does is it collapses the perception of pain. And when the perceptual construct, like, I am just so agitated at you because you did this, I have a perceptual construct based in something inside of me. Of course, I'm the one feeling the agitation, so obviously the agitation's inside of me. If I live in denial, if I say you agitate me, then of course I'm going to hide the root of my agitation from myself. I'm going to create for myself an unconscious, unnatural condition by hiding things from myself. And I'm going to have my mind produce a whole world, literally. The world, as the Course in Miracles talks about, the world of false perception. It is born of error and has not left its source. That lesson from the Course is so powerful. What is the world? And so what forgiveness does is it recognizes that this perceptual construct is driven by the goal that I hold for this person that I'm currently blaming, which might be the person I'm looking at in the mirror. It might be a goal I hold for myself. And what forgiveness consists of is identifying precisely the goal that's causing your mind to use this corrupt data based in some form of hostility or fear to build the pictures of the world that you see. When you remove the driver that's driving that process, then that construct of your mind, that perceptual world that you live in of pain, collapses. And when it collapses in on itself, which means I'm maybe going to get a much more direct and a much deeper experience of it. So the intensity of my pain may very well increase as I start to do that work. But as I carry forward worksheet after worksheet after worksheet, and this is the only tool I know of anywhere in the world that consistently, persistently shaves the energy off of the hostility and fear stored in our minds. That's precisely what forgiveness does. And so as I weaken that voice, then the voice of being, the voice of truth, what was called the mind of Christ, becomes more and more available to me. As I go into my own unconscious dynamics, when I engage in forgiveness, and there are only 2 places on planet Earth that I know of that you can find a description of how the technology of forgiveness works. One of them is in the 1st century Aramaic teachings of Yeshua, which is where I first came in contact with it and began to understand it. The second place it exists is in A Course in Miracles, although I've never found anybody who understands how to forgive from the Course in Miracles. I've taught Course in Miracles all over the globe to groups of people that are working with the Course. I've never met anybody who's found the definition of forgiveness, because it's, if you don't have the brain cells from the Aramaic, you'll read over it, which I did, over it and over and over, but never saw it because it didn't have the eyes to see nor the ears to hear. But here's where the Course is really clear on how forgiveness works. It says this: let go all the things you think you want. Now you take that phrase, all the things you think you want, what are we talking about? We're talking about your goals. And then there's a comma, and it says your trifling treasures put away, comma. So what it's offering is, if you have a goal for anything other than experiencing yourself as the active presence of love, then your goal is a trifling treasure. And it says put it away. In Aramaic, it's cancel the goal. So let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away, and leave a clean and open space within your mind for Christ to come. In other words, that 9-bit space, we've talked over and over the years about the Harvard research that shows that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the maximum data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. Your perception is made up of, my perception is made up of, a max of 9 bits of data driven by my goals. And of course, if someone never understands that their pain, when they deny ownership of it, is projected into their brain's image of others, then they'll always live in these images of, oh, it's Bill, it's Harry, it's Jerry, it's me. Look, there I am looking at me in the mirror, and now I'm to blame. Well, what forgiveness does is it gets rid of, shaves off, removes hostility, fear, blame, guilt, fault, drama, and trauma, leaves the interior structure of this carbon-based memory in a settled, quiet place where what happens? You now have, as the Course says in that particular lesson, a clean and open space within your mind for Christ to come. What is Christ? The mind of active present love. So when I cancel a goal, I've got this genetics, I've got this family history of all kinds of drama and trauma. So I go, well, I guess that's life. It's drama and trauma. And then I run into this tool that says, well, what's the goal you're holding for that person you're pointing your drama and trauma at? Well, I just wanted them to be cordial and nice to me. Okay. Would you be willing to try something? Oh, sure. Okay. How about if you take that trifling treasure you've given your human life up for, and you cancel your need for it? Well, Michael, I just want them to be cordial and nice to me. Why would I cancel that? That's a perfectly good goal. There's nothing wrong with that goal. And I'd say, you know what? You are absolutely right. There is nothing wrong with that goal. That's a perfectly beautiful goal that you and I and everybody in the world should hold for everybody all the time. It's an awesome goal. Well, then, Michael, you're pretty stupid. You're telling me I should cancel my need for it. Well, actually, here's where the rubber hits the road. Why would I suggest you cancel your need for something that is a perfectly good goal? Is it because I can't have it? Because I don't want it anymore? Well, I do want it, and I am going to have it come hell or high water. Okay. So here's why you would cancel a perfectly good goal. Because every time you load it in your mind, it causes your carbon-based memory to kick in with its pain, its trauma, and that kicks the mind of love out of you. That kicks the experience of yourself as active present love out of your mind. And what forgiveness does is it lets you step out of your mind. Rather than kicking being out of your mind, it allows that mind to collapse. Where the state of being, where now there's room for Christ. What happened did it say in that lesson on how forgiveness? Let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away, and leave a clean and open space. The 9-bit mind is now, when you've canceled the goal, a clean and open space. Carbon-based memory with all this drama and trauma shuts up. And when you cancel the goal, you accessed whatever you dropped into. If you did the step in the worksheet that before you cancel the goal, you bring love conscious active and present. You purposely, consciously bring love into your mind. Love is the master solvent. When the perceptual construct of your mind collapsed in on itself, that whole false world collapsed in on itself, it gave you access to the underlying root of the pain. And when you expose that to active present love, then the pain begins to dissolve. It's kind of a nasty image, but it's a perfect image that everybody has seen probably too many times. But you'll remember back in 9/11 when the towers went down, what happened? I mean, we watched that huge structure just collapse into its own footprint. That's exactly what happens with pain perception. It collapses into its own footprint. And when it collapses into its own footprint, the open space in the mind is there, love is present, and now you have access to what was in the footprint, what was in the unconscious. And here I like to bring in the thought from Carl Jung, who said, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Oh, well, that's just the way life is. Look, life's doing it to me again. Oh, actually, there's a book about that you might find interesting. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? I think it was written, I wrote it. Yeah, that's right. And if you want to read a copy of it, fortunately, it's out of print. I can't sell you one. I don't mean fortunately about that, but fortunately, there's still copies around. You can jump on Amazon and eBay, and there are always, lots of copies available. Fortunately, way back 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we published it. We put enough copies out there that it's still hanging around 3 decades later, available for a couple of bucks on Amazon or eBay. And or you can go to our website. Thank you, Jeannie, for the awesome work of how you put the whole website together. It's just amazing. Breathing with you. So you can go to our website, whyagain.org, and if you put that in a search engine / so whyagain.org / book, then you'll come across 9 different translations of the book that you can download free from the website. Okay, Jimmy, you got another comment here. Let's see. To be honest, this is all good, but it must be that the pain is getting worse because I'm choosing to heal, because this canceling is just not shifting what seems to be there. But again, I guess it's about keeping on doing 77 times 7. Yeah, that's what it takes. If you recognize, and for most people, we can look back at our ancestors. We can look back at the stories we heard mom telling us about her grandmother or grandfather or Uncle Charlie or whatever. We can listen to those stories and we'll recognize that we're living in the replicant mind that's just replicating the pain of the generations. And, the scriptures talk about that as, the sins, remembering that in Aramaic, the word sin is simply an archery term. And when you fired at the target and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper would yell sin. So when they said the sins of the fathers, and of course, it's not a sexist term. It's not just the males, the fathers and the mothers, because they both contribute to their energetic dynamics to the sperm and the egg. So the sins of the ancestors are passed to 3 and 4 generations. And then there's an interesting little addendum in there. It not only says passed to 3 and 4 generations, but it says they're passed to 3 and 4 generations, yea, of those who hate me. So here's the Creator giving an instruction. And his instruction, if we went into the long form in today's English language, coming directly from the Aramaic, it would sound more like, well, you've got a lot of generations of unresolved drama and trauma in your carbon-based memory system. And in 4 generations, if you put your pen to the paper and do the math, counting yourself, that's 31 lives. So you have, I would offer, I have, we all have, every thought, every feeling, every unresolved reality in our genes of the 31 lives that went before us. And then if you think about that really, clearly, 4 generations ago, where did they get the mind energy that they're engaging in? Where did they get the drama and trauma? The 4th generation, but from the previous 4. Who got it from the previous 4? Who got it from? We literally have the story of our whole bloodline in there. How much drama and trauma happened? Too much for all of us. I mean, all of us. I don't care what corner of the globe you go to. There's always been this insanity of hate and rage and guilt and fear. If you do the math and you just go back 30 generations, in each of our genetic structures, there's 1.6 billion lives. How much, looking at just ourselves, you and I, the folks that are listening to the show, looking at just how much drama and trauma you've been through personally, and the people around you that have been through, and we live in a world that's so, literally, there's a research group in Canada that tracks the state of peace of the world. And they say that today is the most peaceful time in world history with human beings. And yet, think about what 2, 3, 4, 10 generations ago was going on, whatever part of the globe you're from. There's just so much insanity. And so, yeah, once you wake up to, oh, I've got some serious work to do, then two things have to happen. One, I have to acquire, or three things. I have to acquire the tools to do the work. Two, I have to acquire the skill of using the tools. And three, I have to use the tools. Now, you go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he talks about how, the gate is so narrow, few will be that find it. And I would offer that even fewer will be that will actually pick the tools up and do the work if they do find the gate. Most people turn tail and run the other way. That's one of the reasons for us doing this radio show, kind of partially by choice and partially by the push of creation on me. I've been doing this work full time for a little better than a half a century and have spent time developing the tools. And I was originally trained in the technology world, and if you built or designed or repaired a piece of equipment and it was on your bench in that electronics world that I was trained in, it really didn't matter what your philosophy was. That darn thing had to work when it came off the bench. And so what I've spent the last 50 years doing is refining the tools, discovering the tools, and I say thank you every day for the day that I found the first century Aramaic teachings of Yeshua. But taking the tools and then bringing them from the Aramaic language and having to undo all the Greek baloney that we've been brainwashed with, it's been quite a task. And then refining them, I've got 50 plus years full time. And I mean full time. Jeannie and I do not work nearly as hard now that we're taking care of babies at this work as we used to. But it used to be a 14-hour day plus project for close to 50 years. Well, 45 of those years anyway. Last 6 years we've been taking it a lot easier here in Bristol, Virginia, with a new grandbaby who's now 6, and then a new grandson who's just turned 6 months. So there's definitely a different focal point, but the objective of having this radio show is to be able to have this conversation available to people who aren't going to take 50 years and go out and try to figure it out for themselves. And then I have the additional benefit of, at this stage in doing my own personal work, of having people who ask questions that take my understanding into realms I've never conceived of going before, and getting to engage in those tools and refine my understanding of it. And I'll offer, Jamuna, that for me, in the last 50 years of doing this, it's been about 44, 45 or so that have been with the Aramaic. Prior to that, it was not using the Aramaic understanding, but it's at least 44 years now. I'm not even sure exactly that I've been working with the Aramaic. And I've used the tools consistently for 4.5 decades. And I'll offer that it's the last 3 years for me that have really accelerated my process, and where I've done some of the most important pieces of work that I've done in all of the years I've been doing this work. Now, my offering is, part of the reason for that is because of the interaction that I get to have on this show with people who ask questions and bring up points that I'd never thought about and never would have thought about on my own. and have helped me to refine my understanding and my own practice of the tools. So how long does it take? Well, if you're dealing with 1.6 billion people, let's just go back 30 generations. Or we could go back 31, and instead of 1.6, we're now dealing with 3.2 billion people. What have they been through? What energetic patterns have they left behind for us in our carbon-based memory? And what are we going to have to do to work them through? And that's what these tools are about. That's what this radio show is for, is to be available in an ongoing conversation that benefits me and hopefully benefits you in making these, handing them to, saying, here they are, just take them, use them, pass them on. Find somebody to share them with. And as one does that, then one starts to work the way out of living out of carbon-based memory, out of living out of the body's mind, into living in the mind of being, or the mind of Christ. You know, the carbon-based memory can mimic anything. I mean, it can take forgiveness, as it did, out of Yeshua's mouth, turn it 180 degrees backward, and fool the whole world. I mean, please go find me somewhere in the world where somebody isn't talking about, when the topic of forgiveness comes up, find me anybody, find me a therapist, find me a doctor, find me a psychologist, find me a psychiatrist, find me a minister who doesn't say, yes, and when they did that to you, how did it make you feel? And are you going to forgive them? Find me somebody. I don't know anywhere else you're going to find that understanding. But when you go back to the Aramaic Yeshua, you go to the Course of Miracles, it's right there. Let go all the things you think you want. Your trifling treasure put away. Collapse what's going on in carbon-based memory and leave a clean and open space within your mind where the master solvent called love, delivered by the breath. And you'll notice in the worksheet, there's a reminder to breathe and a reminder to breathe, because that's what cleans out what never belonged in carbon-based memory. And the primary purpose of this whole process we've developed is to support people being fully restored to wholeness, free of fear, guilt, blame, shame, drama, and trauma. All of those energetic patterns, drama and trauma, are all products of the body's mind, of carbon-based memory. And the mind creates these appearances. It hypnotizes us. And you remember the ancients, when they said transcend, they did not mean float out in space somewhere. They were saying put an end to the state of trance, get out of the state of hypnosis and the belief that everybody else is the problem in your life. Because you'll notice you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, and you're the only one that was there every time. What does that mean? That means it's about you. Transcend. But most people are simply self-referential. Oh, what I hold in my mind must be true. I'll just refer to myself for the truth. Oh, I know the truth. It's their fault. Well, time to give that one up and to move into the state of truth and the state of being. Truth and real meaning can only show up where love is conscious, active, and present. The world says, no, meaning comes from going out and accomplishing something, get it done, get the world's goals, succeed in getting those goals done. I'd offer no. Life is not about achieving goals. It's about fulfilling your purpose. Understand and recognize what your purpose is. Function as the presence of love, as your created essence, and everything changes. And so that's the bottom line objective of this work. And as I said earlier, this is going to be our last show on Needle for the next week or so. I'm actually leaving here tomorrow morning. I'm going down. The gentleman who is a fellow naturopath who lives in Florida is going to be traveling to Asheville. I'm going to meet him there tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to take training him in the quantum still point process to the next level so that he can do it to me. And then on Sunday, we've got a couple of folks coming in. We've actually got a house rented here in Bristol, Virginia, and we're going to be working with a couple of people who are going to be doing the quantum still point process as I take Patrick through the quantum still point process. And Patrick, having been trained over the next few days, is going to be taking me through the quantum still point process. So one of the things that I've done, and I'm gonna share this for two reasons. I have shared it in pieces and parts, and I've been refining it. But my vision at this point, well, first of all, before I get into that, starting tomorrow, the show will be a series of pre-recorded workshops that are normally only available if you go to our website and our catalog and purchase them. So they're recordings of live workshops, and that's part of how we support our work is with those DVDs or CDs, and or you can also purchase half price of the CDs and DVD as a streaming link. So normally those are only for sale, but what we've done, because I'm going to be off doing this quantum still point work over the next week, is that Jeannie has taken those and she's turned them into audio tracks. Most of them are actually video workshops. And so those live workshops will be playing starting tomorrow, but it won't be on Needle because we can't do pre-recorded shows on Needle. It will be playing on Podbean. So if you don't have the Podbean app and you want to listen to those shows, they are not going to be in our archives since it is part of how we, I mean, most of what we do is done free anyway. So it's part of how we support ourselves is the sale of our DVDs and CDs and the streaming links to those. But we'll be playing those so they're available free to you over the next week. So download the app Podbean. And as you're done with Needle, log into the app, set up an account, and find Mind Shifters Radio and select that as a favorite. And then when the show's going to start, Dr. Tim will still be doing Needle, but then Podbean will be those workshops over the next week. So you'll get to listen to those workshops live if you choose to. So, but beyond that, what I want to do is two things. I have two purposes for what I'm about to do now. Let me see. We've got a comment in here. Let's see what. Mahalo. Delighted. Mm. Extending love in your direction. So my vision is twofold with what I'm about to share, and what I'm going to share is a vision. You'll remember in the ancient scriptures, they talked about how for a lack of vision, my people perish. Vision, today in our culture, we have vision centers. They have nothing to do with vision. They have to do with sight. Sight and vision are two totally different things. Sight is a thing created by your brain, painted on the inside of your eyeballs, and creates this whole world you think you see out there. The world you think you see out there is not there in any way, shape, or form the way you think you see it. There are reference points that match in the energy system, but it's not there. When you say, I see something, what is happening is the mind has this amazing capacity to turn thoughts into pictures. Just like my TV set has this converter in it that takes signals coming through a piece of wire, and in that signal, if you look inside that piece of wire at that signal, you will not find a picture and you will not find anybody saying a word. But you bring it into the TV that converts it, and all of a sudden you got 100 voices and you got 1,000 channels and all kinds of things happening available. Well, the mind takes thoughts, turns them into pictures. The picture world you think you see is painted on the inside of your eyeballs. It is a product of carbon-based memory. Or if you're open to it, if you've collapsed and gotten free of carbon-based memory, you can begin to get data accurate and direct from the actuality. That's one of the objectives of this work. So I'm going to share my vision. I've worked quite a few hours on this. I've shared pieces of it, but I have two purposes. One, I'm going to ask you if you would, starting tomorrow, because I'll be meeting with Patrick tomorrow and starting to do that training on the quantum still point so he can do it to me. If you would, I would ask that you take this, and Jeannie will put it on the website, and we're going to send it out if you're on our mailing list as a newsletter. Just a single piece of paper or this vision with a request. And I'm making this request now, and then we'll do it in the newsletter. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, go to our website, whyagain.org, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see a place to register for the newsletter. Or, alternate to that, send Jeannie an email at jeanie@whyagain.org. Jeannie at whyagain.org. If you send her an email with your information, she'll put you on the mailing list, and then you'll get this in our following newsletters. We don't send too many out, but you'll get it. So I want to share this vision so that we have your support over the period of the next week. And what I'm hoping will happen is that each of you will tap in, tune in, and through this period of the next week, we've got, I don't know, 8 people or so that are going to be engaging with the quantum still point. So just about any time, daytime during the week, you could tap into that energy and join us in going through the process. Remember, we talked about how on an energetic level, on a physics level, there's nothing we know of that can stop the high energy wave that leaves the mind when we think a thought. Absolutely nothing. So we're going to be speaking this. I'm going to be doing a training with it, training Patrick, and working with people with it. And so this next week, I'm just going to invite you to hold this vision with us. Again, we'll get it put on the website under Quantum Still Point, and we'll get it sent out in the newsletter. And we're just going to ask you to tune in and hold this vision in support of us and in participation. So this is something I'm going to hand to each of the participants in the Quantum Still Point and ask them to make it the focal point of the work we're going to do together this week. So if you would just get quiet, I'm going to invite you to, if you're in a safe place where you can do it, maybe close your eyes and just kind of get quiet and tune into the energy of what I'm about to share with you. And if you would hold that with you throughout the week. So this is the Quantum Still Point Healing Vision. Starts out with a quote from Carl Jung: "Who looks without, in the mind, sight or perception dreams. Who looks within, awakens." The starting point for actual healing is truth. Max Planck, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of the quantum level of creation, said this: "In all my research, I have never come across matter. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. There is no matter as such." Breathe in on that. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. Behind this force is a conscious, and I add to this because I don't think Max probably thought of this, but there's either a conscious or an unconscious intelligent mind. So he says behind this force is a conscious and intelligent mind. Or if there are things we're in denial of, there's an unconscious mind behind it. And he says this mind is the matrix. of all matter. Quantum still point is a sacred inner breath and realignment process where, with willingness, trust enters, thought is stilled, and perception is quelled. As physiological resistance is weakened, the voice of the past is drained of its energy and freed of restriction and impedance. Everything locked in bone by the generations is open, is opened, gently faced and embraced as the structure moves into its natural super. This allows the full expression of conscious, active, present love to enter into my nervous system and do the work of transmuting anything unlike itself. This transmutation restores the power that has, through blame, been energetically locked up and rendered unavailable. Once again, this transmutation restores the power that has, through blame, been energetically locked up and rendered unavailable because it's been hidden within generations of unresolved, dissociated, unconscious pain, trauma, and projection. And then a quote, again from Carl Jung: until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. During deep energy field work, combined with still point breath, I create an opening for letting go of mental, emotional, and nervous system resistance, defined as Satan in Aramaic, and break the addiction to the power person dynamic stored from the past in carbon-based memory. Make note, the breath, known in the ancient Aramaic as Rukadukucha, is literally defined as a feminine elemental force that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. I allow myself to gain awareness of and forgive all disintegrative energy as I release any form of resistance and struggle. I breathe, soften, and let go. I transform my perception and open to the deepest still points. Each time I visit this state, through the dissolution of pain-based energies and the connection to my authentic self, I strengthen the voice of inner wisdom carried on the breath, which opens the gateway to living in deeper ways from the state of being. Consciously originating my part in creation as I experience the actuality of creation directly. Through willingness and unreserved release of all strain, physical, mental, and emotional, I reach a reset from within of my physiology and nervous system. Freed of the grip of my mind, I open the space for deep structural and energetic realignment and reorganization. Brought on by, even if just for one instant, I'm out of my mind. Silence, stillness, no thought. So that's our vision for quantum still point. Again, I'll ask if you will hold that. Watch for the newsletter if you'd like a copy of it. I'll probably get it to Jeannie sometime. She's over taking care of Ryan, the baby, today. So it'll be later this afternoon, this evening. I'll get that off to you and ask you to stay focused with it through the whole week in support of what we're going to be doing. And those who are on the show listening, I look forward to that are going to be joining me next week and or are going to join me the end of May, or the latter part of May for the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again? I look forward to seeing you. Breathing with you, taking deep breaths and allowing the breath to just gently move throughout your whole tissue structure. Remembering that you are the intelligence that Max Planck mentioned in his quote that brings the energy together that we call your material body, which of course is not a material body at all, although it appears to be so. I love how Course in Miracles says it. It says at no time does the body exist. It does not. It's an image brought forward by carbon-based memory of something much more precious, much deeper, much more meaningful than we could imagine a body. To bring our awareness into ourselves as this energy system and be aware of our purpose and our function within that system. And our function is to be whole. Some call it holy, to be fully aware on all levels in every direction. Thank you for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye. Aloha.